Well, welcome everyone to Behavioral Health Literacy, Befriending Your Nervous System to Develop Deeper Emotional Maturity. I'm Adrienne and I'm with Reston Regional Library. And let me welcome our guest speaker, Shabnam Curtis, Certified Life Coach, and she'll be leading the discussion. All right. So
Thank you so much. Thanks, Adrienne. And thanks everyone to be here. It's exciting for me to see all of you here. I'm curious, is everyone from around the area or at least East Coast, or if you can even unmute yourself to tell us or put it in the chat if you're not from the East Coast or around Virginia. Because I know it's open to public, right? The registration.
Yeah, people could register from wherever they're located.
Okay, so I don't know, Reston, Virginia. So yeah, it seems like almost everybody is from around the town. I live in Ashburn, so I think it's count as like all of us are neighbor, considered to the vastness of the country. Fairfax, Virginia. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. It's really exciting for me to share things that I'm very passionate about with you, and I hope that you can get something out of it. I'm going to share my screen and start kind of like going through it to see what we want to talk about today. Sharing my screen here. And I guess I just don't want to put it on the slide mode because then I won't see anybody. But is this okay? Can everybody see me? Can everybody see the slides? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Adrienne, mentioning this is about our behaviors and how we can actually get a little bit of hang of it or to regulate our behavior. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants to do it. But basically, let me see how, yes, okay. So I wanted to start with what is self-development. As a life coach, this is basically the main area of my focus that includes so many different things that we will talk about today and in the future sessions. But overall, I'd like to see what you think was the self-development definition for you. And I provide what I've learned and based on the studies that I've had. And then we want to focus on our behavior today. Our behavior is basically very biological, although it doesn't sound like it, but it's very biological. And our nerve system, a piece of our nerve system has a very big role in it. And that's the vagal nerve. The vagal nerve is the 10th cradle nerve. That is the longest nerve in our nerve system. That starts from the back of our neck, goes all the way down to the lower back, and has so many different rules, responsibilities and rules. And then when we understand how it works, I mean, to scratch the surface, then we want to see, okay, what do we want to do with this information, and how do we use this information to do the self-regulation for ourselves? And then I have kind of like a little bit of a conclusion of, okay, well, what do we think now the self-development is? I am open if you like to ask questions as I'm talking. We do have some interactions, like some little practices that if you like to share your experience, we can definitely do that. But please feel free to stop me and ask questions as I'm going through the slides, because there might be terminology or there might be something you heard differently, and I would like to hear that. All right. Before I say what self-development is from my standpoint, and based on, like I said, things that I've studied, I would like to hear from a couple of people. If you want to unmute yourself, if you like to put it in the chat, what is self-development? What is the definition? How you approach it? Anybody likes to share?
Well, this she's saying I look at self-development is over time you learn from the good things that happen and also from the mistakes or from the bad things that happen, and learn and see how we can reinforce things that have good results and how we can sort of avoid or prevent bad results in the future.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the really the core meaning of the development. Exactly. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? There is no wrong or right answer to it.
Terry in the chat says self-awareness and becoming a better person.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, we can definitely define better and better, and there is no end to it. And we can always become more self-aware, which allows us to be more connected with ourselves and other people, right? So anybody else likes to share before I say it? All right, so based on what I've learned, I believe that when we get more curious, when we know ourselves better, when we can do self-observation more, when we can basically, like self-awareness that Terry said, or learning, like she mentioned, that we learn about our mistakes based on what we've done, the self-reflection, and then learn from it for the future events or the current events without blaming ourselves, of course, with self-compassion. Then we become more resilient. Then we become more connected to life. But it all depends on how we see the reality. It took me a long time in my life to understand that my reality is distorted, because we can always feel like, oh no, I'm seeing everything. And then based on the courses that I've been taking, this resonated with me from Lisa Barrett, this sentence: your own perceptions are not like a photograph of the world. They are not even a painting of a photographic quality like a Vermeer, the painter. They are more like a Van Gogh or Monet, which is impressionist. You see the picture? This is our reality. What we want to do by self-development is we want to bring more clarity to our reality. We want to be more curious about those sides that we don't see, those areas that are ambiguous and we need more clarity. But when we accept that our reality is not the reality, the ultimate reality, then we become more curious to learn more about it. A very quick example is, someone was telling me that in a museum in South Carolina, they are proudly announcing that they used to have some insects. I don't remember the name of the insect, but they killed every single insect because they were eating the stems of the cotton bushes. Many years ago, they killed them all, and then it was all done. So there are so many events like this, but who knows if it was a mistake? Was there reality? How clarity it was there was in the reality? Who knows what was the responsibility of this little insect in the whole evolution? And maybe overall they weren't that, but there was something else that was causing the overpopulation of this. You know, that's just one example, but in our day-to-day life, there is so much that we can learn more to bring clarity to our reality. How does that land? Anybody likes to talk about it? Or in the chat? So I hope it wasn't very controversial or made you think about it. So we are all here for self-development. And I say we because every time that I do these workshops or I work with a client, I really feel that I'm also developing better and more. I'm expanding myself, and it's really, I'm grateful for that. In this series of workshops, I'm focusing on our behavior today, which is for our behavior, we are focusing on our vagus nerve and how it actually impacts our behavior. And then we will talk about our emotions in the next session, and then our body. You'll see that when we get more awareness about our behavior, we will be able to self-regulate ourselves better. And who doesn't want to have self-regulation? It's practice, awareness, practice. But the more self-regulation that we have and the more co-regulation that we have, we will talk about co-regulation, the better we live, the more meaningful our life becomes, right? And as far as emotion, we want to know our emotion. We will talk about in next session that how subconsciously, and it's like below our awareness, but we don't want to feel our emotions. So many of us, so many of our feelings. So we want to bring awareness to our emotions and to listen to our emotions. What's the message? If I feel jealous, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. There is a message in this jealousy. Where is the wound? Where do I want to heal it? And then everything happens in our body. Why don't we feel the behavior or the sensual behavioral impact in our body? Why do we not feel our emotions? Because we are so disconnected from our bodies. Have you heard, or you probably even use it a lot, like, I understand it intellectually, but I'm not emotionally there yet. And that's exactly it, because we are so disconnected from our bodies. From at least 400 years ago to now, but especially from Descartes to now, when he said, I think, therefore I am, and he assumed that the body is just a tool and there is no intelligence in our body, then that was it. The whole culture started shaping towards only our head and our thinking abilities, our cognitive abilities, and then we disconnected ourselves from our body. But our body has a lot of intelligence, and there is so much habitual pattern in our body, in our muscles, in our muscle memory. I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. All the traumas that we've had in our lives, all the pressure, all the even joy, and everything is in our muscle memory. And we will talk about that. But basically, when we know about our behavior and our emotions, and then we go to our body and we learn about it in our body, then it allows us a lot better to bring that clarity to our reality and make ourselves towards a better version. Anybody has any comments or any thoughts on this? Don't be shy.
I have a question. You say about cultivating self-compassion and compassion for others. Do they happen at the same time, or do you really have to develop a lot of self-compassion before you become more aware of compassion for others, or can they be in parallel as we develop it?
Wow, I love that question. Thank you. And self-compassion comes first. As long as or until we don't have the self-compassion, we don't have the real ability of really understanding others and feeling compassion for them. This might bring a lot of questions like, oh, no, I wouldn't take care of myself, but I would totally go and take care of my child. But that is different because that might be a help that your child doesn't need. That might be like being a helicopter parent or a remote parent. It might not be exactly what the child wants. You know, when like the child asks, a very simple example, when the child asks her father, oh, daddy, can you get this necklace for me? And then daddy goes and gets the necklace, but without even knowing about the child, gets a much bigger than the one that the child asked for. And then the child is like, I don't even want to wear this because this is not what I asked for. And this is a very simple one. But if daddy had his understanding of his own self, that, oh, let me listen to see exactly what he wants, then it would be very different. So self-compassion allows us to basically put ourselves in other people's shoes because we allow ourselves to feel. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So we like I talked about self-regulation. What is self-regulation? What do we mean by self-regulation? What is it? In everyday life, you just think about this morning, and I'm sure every one of us has at least one stressor, right? Something that just made me feel a little bit unsettled or a lot unsettled. So it happens to all of us in everyday life, especially with the culture that we live in. Demanding culture, always have to run, always have to do something, always have to achieve something. These are not bad things, but it's a little bit too fast, too much, and it doesn't allow us to breathe. And a lot of time we just go on auto react versus responding. And we don't even have time to self-regulate, but then we ended up at night with feeling bad about our behavior. So how do we want to do the self-regulation? How do we want to build a capacity before the stressor comes in? So when, you know, it's kind of like building a better protection for our windows before the storm comes in. So then we are sure that when the storm comes in, we have the capacity to deal with it. And that's exactly how we want to do it. We want to build capacity in ourselves by awareness, by practices, by knowing ourselves, to make sure that we don't live in the past or the future based on our perception. What I mean by that is, let's say like oh, they didn't invite me to that meeting. And if I don't feel curious about it, I can either blindly allow my perception of the past experience come in and tell me, oh, of course, because they don't care about you. They don't think you add any value. Or based on my previous experience and my perception of life, I can blindly think that like, oh my God, they're gonna fire me. That's why they didn't want me to in this meeting, right? But if I have the capacity to be curious about it, oh, maybe the customer wanted like just certain number of people, or there are so many other things for it. So maybe I shouldn't take it personally and I can think about it. That's where the self-regulation comes in, when we are more open, more curious, so we can bring the harmony in ourselves. And we want to talk about it, that like how we get to know ourselves, what are the tools we can use to bring this harmony to our life. The more, the better, right? It's not going to be 100%. We are here as humans to make mistakes. It's okay. Making mistakes are just learning lessons. But yes, we feel bad about making mistakes, and it's every one of us. But the less feeling bad about it, the more realistic, the more reality with more clarity, then we can feel more connected to life. I hope that makes sense. Any comments, any thoughts?
Kami in the comments says that it's an amazing concept. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
I actually have a question, if I may.
Please.
What you're saying has definitely resonated with me. I think sometimes when something comes along in life, and when it's a mystery, like when we have to decide for ourselves, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Was I not invited to the meeting because of something being wrong with me, or is it nothing to do with me? Sometimes I find that some of us have the tendency to err on the side of caution, in a sense that you choose a negative potential reason, if that makes sense. Because I wonder if there's something about, we'd rather be surprised positively rather than think, oh, it had nothing to do with me, but then it turns out it did. And then there's that potential for disappointment. Or so do you have any thoughts on that, of why is it that when we're given a blank situation that could be, any number of reasons, as for the reason why it happened, say I was not invited to the meeting, it could have something to do with me, it could have nothing to do with me, but what is it that causes us to sometimes kind of choose a self-critical lens or an angle that is kind of more on the negative side?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. For a long time, I was kind of like playing with it. And you know what? Let me tell you this. Let's say that it had something to do with me. And let's say that even the worst thing that came to my mind, oh my God, they're going to fire me. Thinking about like being ready for it is never would make it less painful. But even if it has something to do with me, there are two situations that, well, I think I knew it was coming because I wasn't really the right person for this type of work. Or I think they are mistaken, like an example I heard yesterday, that this person asked her boss not to throw a birthday party for her because of her anxiety disorder. And the boss still did that because they dismissed her anxiety disorder. It was talking about mental illness. And she threw a fit, and she had anxiety disorder, and she had said it. They fired her. But then eventually she won the lawsuit because it was absolutely a mistake for the manager to do it. So it's either something really true about me that is telling me something to take an action before I want to give other people the power to give the action, to take the action for me, or they might be totally wrong. I'm not a victim, and even if they have the power, even if they do something, I'm not going to sit down and listen. I'm not going to be the victim. And that's one example. That's definitely, I can't overgeneralize that, but overall, the tendency of feeling, and most of us are towards that. One is cultural, because the culture is forcing the comparison to us, the culture of achievement. And I want to say the word, but I do want to beg you that don't take me wrong for saying this is the culture of capitalism, but I'm not talking about capitalism versus socialism. I do not believe in any dictatorship or any type of socialism, but I do believe that capitalism has gone too far in America. It's not like this in Europe. Europe is a lot more human friendly, but here we are always on the verge of being compared, even in corporate culture, like the way that our performance evaluates, or anything, like even in my house versus your house, my car versus your car, my phone versus your, it's like always a pressure of comparison. So there is always pressure on us. That's kind of like the undercurrent pressure. And then also based on our childhood, how did we learn? Because if personally, I actually had a very criticizing father. And of course, anything happens, the very first thing, that's a behavioral thing, right? That's a pattern that the very first thing is like, I'm wrong. I did something wrong, or I'm not good enough. That's another thing, the patterns of our childhood. And the biological thing about it is also, we always, why we have the unpleasant feelings, it's because we always, from thousands and millions of years ago, as the evolution happens, we want to survive. We will talk about survival. It's leading our life. It's very biological, and it's our psychology. Sorry, a very long answer to the question. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
There's another question in the chat from Terry. How do you recommend we ground ourselves to develop the curiosity instead of jumping to a negative conclusion?
I love that question, and we will talk about it. That's part of today's discussion. If I self-regulate myself to talk less, perhaps I need to do that. What is it? What is our biology? When I talk about our biology, what is the biology that we're talking about? We talked about the vagus nerve, which is the longest cranial nerve from our like stem of the brain, goes all the way down to lower back. It has so many responsibilities, but basically as part of our autonomic nerve system. Vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the autonomic nerve system, and the name is autonomic. So we would think that it's all different things that our body does on its own, right? Like our digestion, like our heartbeat. Breathing is autonomic, and also we can control it, but breathing is another part of vagus responsibility. Our moods, and I think it even has impacts on our kidneys and liver, but I'm not medical and I shouldn't talk about it. But what I know about it is the autonomic nerve system and the vagus nerve in it has absolutely everything to do about how we behave. So almost 20 years ago, Stephen Porges, he's a professor. I think he's at Northeast University, but don't quote me on that. I forgot the name of his school, but he started doing this research, and now the research is at a level, usually it does take about two decades when it comes to therapy and coaching. So he called it polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is basically based on, I'll tell you about Deb Dana, but Deb Dana defines polyvagal theory, the ability to respond to respond to and recover from challenges of daily living is a marker of well-being and depends on the actions of the autonomic nervous system. With the development of polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges has provided a modern map of the territory of the autonomic nervous system and a new understanding of the way it shapes moment-to-moment experiences of connection and protection. So Debdana is the person who works with Stephen Porges very closely. I've taken her classes, and she's a therapist, and she's the one who brought polyvagal theory to the industry of therapy and coaching. She's amazing. She has a lot of good videos for free in YouTube if you like to hear that. So what is polyvagal theory? Let's see. If you remember, we talked about Stephen Porges having a map of the territory. The territory of autonomic system is huge and layer after layer complexity. But this map is just one map of the entire thing. That doesn't, of course, include, it's kind of like if you're looking at a map of the mountains of an area, it doesn't tell you anything else about the area. It's just the mountains, but there are a lot of other things in the area. But from Stephen Porges' standpoint, from polyvagal theory standpoint, we have this polyvagal theory. We have like 3 different branches that controls this whole polyvagal theory, that brings the polyvagal theory together. And one is the autonomic hierarchy. That is the most important part in this whole theory that he brought together. Autonomic hierarchy is, you probably have heard about fight, flight, freeze. So what Stephen Porges says is when we are very content and when we are in a relaxed mode of being, we are actually just in the ventral system. It's kind of like we can be creative, we can feel pleasant feelings, we can connect with others in a very easy way. But then the stressor comes in, and the stressor depends on the trigger, depends on the stressor, small or big. It takes us, it throws us to fight or flight. So it depends on the person. Each person has a very unique response to it, but our nerve system is arousing, it's mobilizing. That means depends on the trigger, small or big, we can feel anxiety, we can feel fear, or a lot of other different unpleasant feelings, even going to panic, right? It depends on the trigger. If we get to the point that we are scared or we have anxiety and we have not been able to do anything about it, our autonomic system shuts down. This goes back to the reptilian brain part of the brain that, you know, like if you've seen like a lot of, maybe like even snakes do that, a lot of animals, including a lot of reptiles, they make believe that they are dead to kind of like get away from to survive, to get away from danger. And that's what our system does. Now, it's a little different for us because us, human beings, with the cognitive ability that we have, we go to depression, we go to abyss, absolute helpless feeling, or we can even, and I personally do both of them, or we can go to people-pleasing mode. When we are functioning depressed people like I am, then a triggering environment can take us to people-pleasing mode. We just want to survive. We just want to fit in to survive. So that's the autonomic hierarchy. And I have a little chart about it that we will talk a little bit more. And how do we even feel and sense all these emotions? We have a neuroception system in our body. The neuroception, there are a lot of septions. The neuroception, interoceptions, there are a lot of septions in the nerve system. And we will talk more about it when we talk about somatic awareness in the third session. But neuroception is basically the activity that constantly, moment by moment, watches our capacity and our activity inside on our nerve system and the impact of the environment on our nerve system. And then based on our perception, it starts sending messages to brain. So we take it from our body and then we send it to our brain. That's how our body is important. That's the neuroception, that's the system that works to get these. And then how do we want to deal with it? The co-regulation. We are all born to connect, especially us mammals, right? But even non-mammals, we know that like even fishes or a lot of other animals that are not mammals, they are still they survive when they are in groups. But we have the cognitive ability. We are in a way different than other people. I absolutely do not agree that we are better than other creatures, but we are different than other creatures, not people. And because of that, we want to connect. We are the meaning-searching creatures, we human. And that's because of the new part of the brain that we have. But co-regulation comes through safe connections. When we feel safe with someone or belong to a group, and when it's genuine, then we feel co-regulation. And co-regulation can go as far as a bunch of guitarists are playing one piece, but each one of them is playing a piece of that piece. However, if they had researched that their heartbeat can actually be in the same frequency, even their brainwave become in the same frequency, and that's how deep co-regulation can be. So that's basically the structure, the main structure of polyvagal theory and how our vagus nerve plays to impact our behavior. Any thoughts, any questions?
Kami put in the chat box, I like the idea of, I'm paraphrasing your concept if I'm understanding correctly, preparing ahead of time, a self-regulated response to all the patterns in our lives that tend to be repetitive and can easily deregulate us due to various triggers. So instead of being surprised by one's own repetitive dysregulated response to repetitive stimulus, we can anticipate and have preloaded calm self-regulation.
Yeah. Wow, you said it beautifully, Carrie. Thank you. Was it Carrie?
And then he says, would love to hear more on this.
Kami, yes, thank you so much. Thank you. You said it, you put it beautifully in words. Thank you. So yeah, let's see what else we want to explore. The autonomic hierarchy is one of the three legs of basically the polyvagal theory, right? I don't necessarily like these colors, but this is how originally they offered, from going from green to yellow. So I just wanted to keep the theme of the colors. But basically, there is a hierarchy, and that means that when we are feeling very content and when we are very connected to life, and then the stressor comes, the trigger comes in, then we are going to fight and flight, and then we go to freeze or appease. That has to be like one after another one, and therefore you have to come back one after another one. Now, a lot of you might be like that, or you might know people who actually get very angry, or when they have anxiety, you can absolutely see it, and they become very mobile about it. They don't, unless it's overwhelming, they don't go to dorsal. They don't go to like freeze and depression. But a lot of people, I'm one of them, that because of the fear of being angry that I have, and that's a habit from childhood, I pass that very quickly. Even if I become angry, I just deny it very quickly and I jump to dorsal and freeze. Depends. If I'm alone, I go to freeze, and it's just like I have to go lay down, and I have to deal with basically a lower version of depression. If I'm with people, like even 2 weeks ago, I noticed I was self-observing in a wedding. I immediately became a people pleaser. And then later I was like, I wasn't actually self-observing. I was self-reflecting after the wedding. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I did, because I just needed to fit in. So environment also impacts a lot, but this is how it goes. The hierarchy goes up, but it has to go through everyone, and it goes back down. So what does that mean? That means when a lot of us, when we are in the freeze or appease, we feel like a victim. That's kind of like one thing about depression that is very common for a lot of people, that feeling like a victim is like, it takes us all the way down to that helplessness. But if I feel like, oh, it wasn't all me, I'm angry at this behavior, or that was like frustrating to see that, then I'm coming back. Then I'm like kind of like the arousal of the nerve system is coming down, allowing me to get more connected with my prefrontal lobe and become more basically rational, bring the rationality to my emotions and become more connected. And that's where we want to be. So when we jump to fight or flight, or eventually to the freeze or appease, we want to do things that we will talk about to allow ourselves, to enable ourselves to walk back to the ventral way and to the ventral vehicle, which is where we are grounded. And then we want to respond to any event or any stressor or any trigger. So when we are in ventral, these are just a few of the emotions. We will talk about emotions extensively in next session, but a few of the emotions that you could feel is like you feel settled, calm, you even feel joy, you feel more curious, you're more open. Even the posture of your sitting can be very different. You don't sit like this. You sit open, your heart is open, and these are things that we can also practice, teach our body to do. So with the cognitive ability and the body intelligence that we have, that's where we get the practices to come back, to be connected. But when we are in basically sympathetic, I think I didn't say the name, sympathetic or fight or flight, when we are kind of like fidgety and anxious or scared and very alarmed, that's how we could feel. And there is a spectrum for each one of them, right? We could feel a little bit unsettled, or we could feel very powerfully, each one of these emotions. And when we are in the dorsal, that's where we feel like we are helpless, or deep sadness, grief can take us there actually very naturally, of course. Loss of a loved one, loss of a big thing that was important to us. Grief can take us there very naturally. But we feel like we are trapped. We can't get out of it. That's how it feels. But we can get ourselves out of it with the right response. Any questions? Any thoughts? Now I want you to think about this. What was a moment that you felt connected to life? It could be today, it could be yesterday, recently. And what was the moment that you felt connected with others, like another person? Anybody likes to share? If you want to think about it a few seconds, and I would love to hear it. Oh, Terry raised her hand. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, there's just this afternoon that I remember. It was years ago, but I was living in Seattle at the time, and I got on the bus. And when I got on the bus, I saw a friend, and I sat with my friend, and we talked the whole way home. And then I got off the bus, and then I ran into another friend, and then I walked a block and I ran into another friend, and then I walked another block and I ran into another block. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing ever.
Oh, yeah. 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 Wow. A lot of connections. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you felt?
It felt great. It felt wonderful. Yeah.
Do you remember what you did after that? Like, did it encourage you to do something creative, or?
I think I just went to the YMCA for exercise or something, like
Uh-huh.
maybe a yoga class or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. These are all related. These are all patterns. And if we pay attention to it, we see how it impacts our lives.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
It's funny that Terry mentioned yoga class, because Kami put in the chat box yoga class. That was their answer too.
Oh, yes. Yoga. Yes, definitely. Most of the time, I think we feel like a connection to life when we do yoga. I mean, I think a lot of different exercises for different people, but yoga with all the stretches that we do and the kind of like the power that we feel in ourselves, we really feel connection to life. Yes. That's a very good example. Thank you. Just think about it. If you remember, anytime you remember, think about it.
Now, Eliza says dancing.
Yes, that works for me too. Yes. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead, please.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it depends on my interpretation of connected to life. I was thinking as life on the earth, nature, and so on.
Mhm.
And my example that gave me a lot of insight is many years ago, I was in Puerto Rico on the beach. And the beach was very crowded. I wanted to do some swimming. So I went further out a little bit to swim. And I got caught in I don't know whether you call it riptide, where the water flows away from the beach.
Okay.
And if I'm not careful, I'll be pushed further and further away. So, but I remember, because I grew up on an island, I remember to swim parallel to the shore. And maybe about a long distance down, that somehow I can get back to the shore, and it was fine. And what happened to me, my mind at that time, I say, is because years ago somebody taught me that you cannot fight nature, you work with nature. So I look at nature as water and the power of water. You cannot fight the power of water, you work with it. So you just, instead of trying to swim to the shore, you get pushed away. I swim parallel to the shore. And after a while, maybe at certain point, the force is not so powerful. I could go to the shore and I'm okay. So it taught me, like, you have to be connected to nature and understand nature. And this is how I interpret connected to life. I don't know if this is relevant to this discussion.
Yes, yes, very much. Oh my God, that is very touching. That is beautiful. Thank you. I was listening to someone, an indigenous leader, talking about how indigenous people, this was about an indigenous group of people in Alaska and how they teach their children. And he was saying, in our language, we don't have the word sustainability because we live with the nature. We don't have to do the sustainability the way that Western culture does, because we live with the nature. We work with the nature. We try to understand the nature. And that's how it comes out. You know, that's deepest connection that you can take. Yes. Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Welcome.
Wow. Very touching. Go ahead.
Lindsay also says in the chat box, singing in the car and sitting in the garden.
Yes, yes. Sitting in the garden is definitely because of the nature. At the end of this slide deck, I have a few suggestions, but when you get the slides, it's just a suggestion, but you can also do it with your, like add yours to it. And singing is because it's very close to our vagus nerve. It's very calming. One of the things is even like touching here, but singing or humming, it calms the nerve system, the vagus system down. It's and it's very soothing. Yes, and you feel connected. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. There are a couple other slides I'm gonna skip for now because we have more slides to go, and if you have time, I come back to it. So these are just like the little self-awareness, but I'm hoping we can come back to it. But the second leg of the polyvagal theory is neuroception, as we talked about, that it's actually our body and our nerve system constantly looks for the cues of safety or danger. There is absolutely no difference between us and people 400,000 years ago. It's developed more, it's connected to our prefrontal lobe, but we are still, survival is the major driver for our lives. And like I mentioned before, it's even the reason that we feel the negative, no, I don't like negative, the unpleasant feelings even more, because we are constantly searching for the cues of danger to make sure that we do something safe, that we can survive. Nowadays it's very different. Our triggers are very different than, you know, a bear attacking us, unless you're hiking. But we have a lot of subliminal and covert triggers in our society, a lot of undercurrent of anxiety that our nerve system is constantly searching for those, we call it safety or danger, cues of safety or danger. And that's basically our survival. It's basically it's below our awareness. However, if we practice, and we will talk about it in somatic awareness course or workshop, that when we pay more attention to the subtle changes in our body and how subtle emotions can bring those subtle changes in our body, we can get a hang of it. We can feel it, that like, oh, this is how I'm connecting with the environment now. This is how my senses, like this, oh, this muscle is triggered, or oh, I'm feeling this emotion. So it is not impossible to get a hang of it, but normally it's below our awareness. I do see that I have a typo here. And basically, and I mentioned it, that our nerve systems through our body reads these messages. The neuroception activities bring the messages in, and then that's when the brain and the body sends it to our brain. And our brain, based on our perception, now whatever our childhood was, whatever traumas that we've had even through adulthood. Based on our perception, our brain starts taking action or reacting to it. But we want to learn all of these to basically respond versus react. So we want to retrain our body and our brain again, if that makes sense. When you look at this face, this is basically a face that could be interpreted very differently. If anybody likes to share, what is the first feeling or thought that comes to your mind when you look at this face?
Kimmy says focused.
Focused? Yes, please.
I think I see somebody is about to do something, maybe something drastic.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anybody else? Serious. Peg says serious. But do you see how many different interpretation we can have? And my interpretation of someone else said something else. Internal thoughts. So like he's deep in thoughts. And believe it or not, this face can be scary to me. You see how different our perceptions are? Based on our experience, our past experience. So yeah, this could be just a serious face. Could be even a little sadness behind it when I look at it with curiosity. But the very first perception for me is, oh my God, he's mad at me. So it's very different for different people. Yes, please, Chi.
Because I say this because I did not see any relaxation on the face.
Mm.
Did anybody see any relaxation of the muscles?
No, that's true. It seems like he is deep in thought. He could be a serious person, but we don't know, right? Each one of us has a different perception, and it could be just this is him, you know. Even while he's relaxed, maybe while he is in that neutral or relaxed, that's a tall order for this type of personality. But it could be like overall he just clenches his jaw, or those that impacts those muscles. But my point is, our neuroception is based on our perception. Each one of us can look at this person very differently, and none of us, unless we start co-regulating, talking, connecting with this person, none of us can guess what is in his mind, or how he is feeling. There is absolutely no universal way to say, oh, this person is a scary person or this person is a serious person, because it could be very different. So my point is, we really, and after I learned about this, I noticed that I used to smile a lot, and subconsciously it was because I am scared of a non-smiling face, and I didn't want to have that face. But then I learned that, like, oh, not everybody is scared of my non-smiling face. So these are all our perceptions. That's the point, that it's very different for each one of us. Let me skip this one. Hopefully we can come back to it. Co-regulation. Co-regulation is basically when we are safely connected to another person or another or a group, when we feel belong, which means genuinely, because it could be like we are in a group and we are really trying hard to fit in. That doesn't bring co-regulation. But when we are within people among us who make us feel like, oh, I can be myself, that brings co-regulation, that creates that deep connection and make our body feel safe, that, oh, you're safe here, you're safe with these people. Usually we begin to learn it from our own caregivers, but we all know that there is no perfect parent, and also our caregivers had probably so many other things in their minds that they didn't have the emotional maturity to provide a very perfect co-regulation behavior to us. So we get to the point that we start learning to co-regulate with other people. We go towards having friends or having this sister over this sister, we feel who is the best one that I can connect with, I can be safe with it, I have an uncle, he's an amazing person, but I know if I want to have something like a secret, I definitely should not talk to him about it, because if I say about the secret, and especially if I say, can you please not to tell anyone, this can it be just between us? Then half an hour later, people are calling from Iran. They're like, oh, I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm like, seriously? So he can be safe in so many other ways, but certainly we know what are the aspects of each person that we can be safe with. But that safety brings connection. And when we have enough of a safe environment, then we can start to self-regulate. Because almost none of us have learned it through childhood. It rarely happens because parents have been so busy with so many other things that didn't have or didn't even know about this, although these are natural things, but the culture dragged them towards a lot of other things that we need to develop the co-regulation to find that safe environment, and then we can do self-regulation. And that's amazing how it happens, because we are mammals, because we really need the connection. Any comments, any questions? Anybody wants to share if you felt connected with someone and you felt like, or if you were somewhere that you were with other people, but you felt lonely, or you felt really comfortable with you being just on your own? Anybody likes to share anything like that? The wedding that I said, I was 2 weeks ago. Of course, every event has its own complexity. I mostly enjoyed my time, but at the same time, I did feel lonely in different ways. Although, there were a lot of people around. And there are definitely many times that I feel like I just want to be on my own to recharge. Now, it very depends on the personality of the person. If if I'm introverted, extroverted, I definitely need more me time, more solitude. And if someone is more extroverted rather than introverted, we have it all, but it's like one is dominant, and it depends on our situation and our age and everything. But people who are more extroverted, they need less me time sometimes. So it's very different. Did anybody share? Yeah, the one person shared. Connection with animals. Oh my God, yes, actually, that is very true. I do have 2 little dogs, and it's just like all the moments of awe in my day is with them. And then, yeah, it's just animals are just so pure. Animals and children, right? They're just very pure. Yeah, thank you. So, okay, we talked about the polyvagal theory. The 3 legs of the polyvagal theory are the hierarchy of it, how we can be connected, and then a trigger comes in, and how we can go to fight or flight. And if we can't do anything there, we might, it depends on the person. We can jump to the dorsal, which is basically freeze and feeling like helpless. But what do we want to do with that, with all that information? I think it was Kami mentioning. So what do we do for self-regulation? There are basically, based on polyvagal theory, there are 3 pathways to safety for us. It's like embodying practices that can calm our body, the environmental, like how we can change the environment, or the relationships that we have. I'm just curious to know which one of these is usually that you would take when you feel a stress. What do you usually do? Like, do you work on your body? Do you do something in your environment, or do you contact someone? How do you do it now when you feel the stress? Does anyone like to share?
Peg says a connection with others in rebuilding group for separated, divorced, and widowed.
Yeah. I think do you mean that like people who are having the same experience all to be together? Like to share experience and like a supportive group?
Yeah, there's a rebuilding group in Northern Virginia that the group gets together and they have facilitators. And I think for someone who felt very alone when I was first separated, it was interesting and helpful to see others that were experiencing similar things and just not feeling alone.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, these type of supports are co-regulating. Yes, exactly. Thanks for sharing that this group exists. That's amazing.
I think one thing I've noticed for myself is, I don't know that it's the healthiest way to do it, but you kind of look for easy ways to distract the mind.
Yeah, we do, right? Yeah, like shopping or TV.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately we do. And those are coping mechanisms. And I know it can mean different to different people, but we really want to find healthy self-soothing practices rather than coping mechanisms. And let's talk about it. But usually like, there are people who are like, oh, I go for a run, or, oh, I just call someone, like call my friend, or call my mother. There are some little things that we have, but we want to expand that. We want to have more in our toolbox, that when a stressor comes in, then we want to see what else we can do to self-soothe ourselves, to go back to that connection and safety level, and then start responding. Because in that connection, like I said, our heart is open. We are more curious. We can bring more clarity to our reality. That's why we want to have more tools in our toolbox to basically deal with the triggers and stress. So one is embodied, and this is a very small list of what we could do. Believe it or not, sighing and actually yawning, it's very soothing for our body. So usually, like if you have come across dogs yawn when they are nervous, and that's a auto reaction from their body because the body wants to soothe itself back to connection and safety. But if we yawn, and we all know that someone yawns and then the other person starts yawning, right? That is certainly doesn't mean that I'm bored. That means that there is something going on that my body needs to feel to feel safe. Sighing also is the same thing, but we want to make sure that it's kind of like the right type of sigh, you know, like if it's a sigh of despair, it's like, oh, that probably doesn't help. But a sigh of relief or a sigh of contentment or a sigh that can bring us back to safety, that's very important, and it certainly helps our regulation and to take us back to the safety. Breathing is very important. We all probably know that there are breathing classes. There are very many different types of breathing. Like they talk about square breathing, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, 4 in. It works for some people. There's like 4, 7, 8, 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out from your mouth. That works for some other people. But if none of that is something that you have experience with yet, the most simple one is just sit and allow your body to relax and have a couple of deep breathing, just deep, slow inhale and deep, slow exhale. It helps a lot. And the more you do it, the more your body feels safe, which I mean, like not 10 of them, like do a couple or 4 or 5, but the more often you do it, the more your body gets used to it. That's how you can calm yourself. Touch is very important. It's important, like for me, sometimes I feel like I just want to hug myself. In general, touching your body, feeling your body is actually a very self-soothing thing. Now, a lot of us might feel differently about it because either we are not used to it or we feel shame because of the cultural shames, or if someone has a sexual abuse in her or his history, that might not be the thing. But we can start with soft touch. We can start with like maybe for someone who has like sexual abuse history in her life or his life, maybe just touching a little bit your face, just feeling your body, and maybe slowly expanding your touch, your legs, you know, even your feet, you know, touching your feet. Christine Neff, the master of self-compassion, she has meditations in her website, and I have a link at the end of these slides. You can do those meditations for self-touch that brings a lot of calmness, because we have a lot of muscle memories that it can actually be really soothed. Another thing is we can even think about someone who touched us that meant a lot. You know, it was like at the moment I might be alone and I'm very frustrated with something. Can I just close my eyes and think about that time that my husband just put his arms around me, or my mother came and hugged me, or my daughter hugged me? You know, it's just very different. And even imagining it, Deb Dana calls it anchoring, thinking about something pleasant, like someone who touched you in a very pleasant way. That's one way of anchoring. There are other ways of anchoring. We will talk about it in other sessions. And there are a lot of other somatic practices. We will talk more about all of this, not all of them, of course, but many more in our somatic awareness session. But to begin with, these could be things that you can try and see how it works for you to bring yourself back to connection and safety. These are all self-soothing, not self-regulating is part of self-regulating. You want to self-soothe, you want to go back to safety, and then you can respond. Because I speak a lot and because I didn't do good time management, I wanted to do a body scan here, but I'm just going to leave it for now. But this is a form you can use for a body scan. It's very important to, even if you can close your eyes and remember all different pieces and parts of your body, and just feel how it feels. A lot of time we don't even know that we are clenching our jaw. A lot of times we don't know that our hands are just so fisted, or I'm sweating, or I have actually a really contracted muscle in my legs. We don't even know it because we are in so much in trance and under the pressure. But if we just give ourselves a couple of minutes to just close our eyes, or even if you are in somewhere that you can't close your eyes, just allow yourself to go through all different parts of your body to see how your body feels. It brings you back to safety. It's usually, and the more often you practice it, the more your body gets used to it, and it helps you to feel safer in your own skin. And then we have environmental. So think about all different sensories that we have. When you are distressed or when you are triggered by something, is there a smell that can help you? Sometimes even walking into a coffee shop, and that smell of coffee, it can be actually soothing. It can be joyous in a way that can change your mood. Or listening to certain music related to your mood. Or someone, I think Peg mentioned singing, or touching something soft, or touching your pet, or sometimes even if you have like a blanket, your home, and you have a blanket that you feel if you just cover yourself with that blanket, you feel a little bit safer. These little things, they are all little, but you can find the one that would work for you. Going to the nature is definitely helpful for, I want to say, majority of people, unless there is a trauma with it. But for majority of people, being in nature is definitely soothing. But if you don't have nature by you right there, you can even watch, like a video of nature, or even pictures of nature if you are in a rush, just to remind yourself that you're connected to a bigger system that has a lot of beauty in it. You can take yourself back to the safety. Or if, like a lot of writers have like a little corner for themselves that, like, if I sit in that corner, I can just start writing. We can have a little corner in our house that makes me feel more safe. Each one of them might work or not. It can change over time, but little things like that can bring overall safety back to us when we are stressed. And then relational is, first of all, the relationship with ourselves. Because we have a lot of conflicting thoughts, behavior, conflicting beliefs, that if we don't accept it, then we constantly have inner fights. And I'm actually designing another course for self-criticism and the inner voice. It's kind of like another course by itself, because we do experience a lot of mixed feelings that could be just a concept. We will talk about it in our emotional class, but I'm also about all these mixed emotions and things, or mixed thoughts and beliefs. But I'm actually designing a separate course for the inner voice and the conflicts in ourselves. and then a relationship that we have with others. Maybe the stressor is about a relationship with another person. We can think about, is the relationship reciprocal or not? Has there been reciprocation over time? Or has it been like, I've been away, he or she has been doing more, or I've been doing more, he or she has been avoidant? Any type of relationship. But when you are thinking about a longer term in a relationship, when you even think about the moments that there was reciprocation, you bring safety back to your body, and then you can bring more curiosity about that conflict, that stressor. So that helps a lot to us to eventually to self-regulate and have a mature response to the stress. We have to make sure that we communicate, me and you and all of us communicate through our body language. And there is a research that says our body language actually speaks 95% compared to the verbal. You know, the words are only 5% of what we convey, but our body language offers 95% of our relationship. So it's very important that we talk with our eyes, with the way that we look. We talk or don't look, or avoid, or the tone of our voice, or even head movements. You know, is it like the way that we talk about it? It's not just necessarily very overtly, but our neuroception system takes it and translate it based on the old experiences that we have, and it could trigger us. So any facial expression, any eye movement, any or avoidant of a look, anything like that could be a stressor for us, but we don't want to blindly react to it. We want to be sure that we know about it. We can allow ourselves to go back to safety and then see what it was. What was the reality? Are we just blindly reacting from our past experience, or are we just settled here to open up other opportunities to respond? Okay, the back of our neck here, the bottom of the stem of brain, basically, that's where the hub of all these sensory nerves are. And usually that's another thing. I should have put it in the body practices, but that's basically where you can just touch the back of your neck, even give it like a light massage. If you can do it now, you will see that. Just see if you feel any difference, because it gives me a very pleasant feeling when I give a little massage in this hub of different nerves. That is another thing that can calm you down. And I will put it in the other slide because that's the right place for it. Overall, I have like a few suggestions. Listening to music or singing, of course, checking in a few times per day, even if you have to put a reminder on your phone, but check in. How do I feel? What is my posture? Am I just reacting? Am I just running and rushing? Can I slow down? Just check in a few times per day, and your body will appreciate that. Like I mentioned, I have a link at the end of the slides. Christine Neff has a lot of good self-compassion meditations. I personally learned a lot from those meditations. They were very helpful for me. A little small awe or glitter, just be grateful for little things, you know, every day find something, at least one thing, to be grateful for it. And that will change. They say that there is research that it changes the chemistry of your brain after 6 months. So just remind yourself of little things that you are grateful for. And like I mentioned, breathing deeply and slowly can really calm your body down. I highly recommend if you can just sit and relax and then do the slow breathing. It helps a lot. It usually works after a while, a lot better and better and better. It's 3:28. I do want to hear from other people, but let me just go through the last slide here, almost the last slide, and then if anybody can stay, and I would be happy to talk to see if you have any questions and everything. So overall, we started with like, what is self-development? And I just wanted to close everything that how self-development happens based on what we just learned, you know, like in our behavior, what is it, how it happens, and how we can actually take ourselves back to safety. Overall, this is how I see it, that we have patterns of habits and beliefs. They can be conscious, they can be subconscious. It can be emotional, somatic, or behavioral. There are so many different patterns in us. If we recognize our patterns, especially the subconscious ones, like this was subconscious for me that I jumped to people pleasing. It's now conscious. So I recognized it. And then I want to accept it instead of hating myself for that, to see what are we fixated on? Why do I do that self-pleasing? Because I want to fit in, because I'm scared of not being loved. There are so many reasons behind it, but we want to find that fixation. And we want to see how it limits us. It limits me because I'm not myself, because I do not like not to be myself. I do not like to censor myself. So when we find that, then we go through self-soothing, self-compassion, instead of, oh, I hate that version of myself. How many times we say that per day? Oh, I hate that version of myself. No, we want to integrate everything. If I fall under that people-pleasing, it's because of something that needs to change. That's a message for me. There's no hate here. Then we start changing practices and we embody the new version of that practice. And remember, we say it, we read about it, we talk about it. That's all here in our head. Until we embody it through practices, we would not feel and sense it, and we would not be able to do it completely. So it's very important to embody it. And we will talk about embodying in the third session, that we talk about body awareness and somatic awareness. And at the end, I want to say that's where a coach can come in, someone like me who is trained to actually watch you and see what you are saying, how is your body when you are saying it, and what you are not saying, and all those blind spots that you might not see, like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm like, well, I'm hearing something different. What about this? What about that? That's where a coach can help to make it like personalized for you, to help you to find those patterns. And this is all. You think, why do we do that? All for finding more meaning and purpose in our life. We are meaning-making creatures. We want to live a meaningful life. And when we are in our deathbed, we want to make sure that we lived a connected life. We didn't feel lonely most of the time. And that's all because of our behavior, our perception of others' behavior, the environmental factors and everything. But we want to be more open and more aware of it. That's basically it. And this is my information. So it's 3:32. I understand that if anyone likes to or has to leave, but any question, any comments, any thoughts, I would love to hear it. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. There is my email here. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please don't hesitate to contact. I would love to talk. And I hope that we see you in the next class. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and the next session is on August 12th. It's virtual. It's emotional health literacy. And then the same program will be held in person at Reston Library on August 26th. And then in September is when we're going to do the sessions on somatic health literacy.
Thank
And
you.
registration for both of the programs in August is already open. So go ahead and sign up if you'd like.
I really appreciate every one of you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shabnam, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thank
This has
you.
been really valuable. Thank you.
Thanks.